Go find a bed or
I was
something.
just asking Clementine if she knows who the man on her radio is. It's okay, honey. You can tell us. Who is he? What does he want?
uh,
Go ahead, Clem. It's okay. You're not in any trouble.
It's just a friend. I don't think he wants to hurt us.
What has he been saying to you? What have you been saying to him?
I told him I was trying to find my parents and that they were in Savannah. He really seems nice. I think he wants to help me find them.
We finish our conversation with the stranger, and Lee is motivated to find Clementine even more, but something is watching over us, and it's loud. We finally understand what Vernon was talking about back at the bell tower in episode 4. The horde of walkers that were after us at the end of episode 3 are in Savannah, but they're a lot bigger and horrifying. They're all over the streets and are slowly entering the sewer where we are. We need to find another way out, so we headed forward and found an elevator door. It's hard to open with our hands, so we found a rib spreader and got it to open the door. However, the infection is making Lee lose consciousness. He tumbles over and passes out. Lee then wakes up to Omid, Kenny, and Krista about to hack off his infected arm, but Lee wakes up just in time to stop them. They said that maybe cutting off the arm could not only prolong the turning process, but it could possibly stop Lee from turning into a walker. My friend and I are given a decision to allow him to cut off his arm or to leave it alone. We thought to ourselves that with Lee passing out and with how long it's been since his bite incident, it's far too late to save Lee, so we decided against the idea. The group is shocked with the decision, but Lee is adamant to just watch over him if anything happens. We get to the elevator and start climbing the ladder. Come to find out that we're actually below a hospital, which is why Vernon and the others live in the morgues. We saw more walkers here and there. One even fell down the elevator shaft, but Lee gets dizzy again and passes out in the elevator. Luckily, his legs were wrapped around the bars, so he didn't fall off. Lee then wakes up and gets back to climbing. We made it to the roof and yeah, the streets are littered with walkers. Everywhere we look has hundreds of walkers and there doesn't seem to be a way out. That was when Omid had an idea. The bell tower that's right next to the hospital. If we ring that bell, it'll draw a lot of walkers towards the noise, allowing us to find a path out of the hospital. So we found a ladder and put it on the edge of the hospital to the bell tower. The group started making a decision, who should climb the ladder. They mostly agreed that Omid should do it as he's the shortest, so he'd be the lightest out of all of us. However, we believe that Lee should be the one to climb as he has nothing left to lose. They didn't like the idea, but they reluctantly agreed. We started climbing into the tower, but the ladder starts to break, so we hurried and made it. There's no other way out, as the hatch was closed shut, so we rang the bell. Now, we have to jump back to the hospital. A bit scary, as we don't have the pickaxe like before, so we're doing this raw. Lee jumps for it, but he made it. The bell's been rung, and now we have to make it back to the house. And as we made it to the house, and make it to the back way to check on the boat...
Holy...
well, shit, there goes our boat.
The fuck? Come on, just come the fuck on!
Well,
Vernon and their cancer group stole it. Now we're stranded in Savannah, nowhere to escape but to the outer part of the city. The group is pissed, especially Kenny, and Krista says that she's done with cities and has been nothing but trouble for them. Kenny isn't all for it, but my friend and I agree that cities have been fucking us over, so we need to get the hell out of here. But bro, the walkers found us, and quite frankly, that was Lee's fault. So we headed inside and started prepping for them. We started telling each of them to do something to be prepared, but when we got to Omid, he froze up. We asked him what was up, and that's when we saw it. The front door is wide open, and he's booking for it. Lee tries to tell everyone to help Omid, but then a walker grabs Lee's leg, but we handled that situation. We started holding the door closed and got it boarded up for a bit. Krista says this place is a fortress, so it'll be fine. Yeah, it wasn't fine. The walkers came through the windows and Bree came back to say hi. We said bye, put a meat cleaver to her head, and went upstairs. We put a drawer by the end of the hall and prepared for a standoff. Our guns were loaded, but we didn't have a lot of ammo, so we started taking shots at them one by one. But now we're getting very close to running out completely. We're stuck and there didn't seem to be anywhere to go, but there's that attic. So we hurried up. Now we're stuck in the attic. We thought about jumping from the window, but we dropped to our death, so that wasn't an option. Kenny starts to panic and starts talking about Lee and his bite. It was starting to turn a bit like the Larry situation, and we didn't want Lee to have a new head, so we're telling him that it ain't gonna be like that. Things start to heat up, and we're given the option to grab this little statue to throw at Kenny. Before I can make the decision to do it, Kenny grabs it and throws it behind him. It hit the wall, and that's when we realize that the wall of this attic isn't sturdy at all, and it connects to another house next door. Kenny makes the plan to grab a clothes hanger and start beating into the wall. After Kenny, it was going to be Omid, and each of us would get a turn. Lee dresses up with Omid and Krista, and we start talking. We eventually say that Lee might turn and didn't want Clementine to be by herself, so we trusted them with her if anything were to happen. Although Krista doesn't want to think about that, Omid told Krista to listen to Lee as this was something he needs for them to do. Kenny finishes up his turn, and now it was Omid's turn. Kenny finds a drink and gets to it. He then passes it to us, and we took a sip. We then give it back to Kenny, and he offers it to Krista. She hesitated, but then takes a huge swig. This shocks Kenny, like, a lot. It was kind of funny. We then started talking to Krista about the Larry situation and how it happened. Kenny got to talk his thing about Ben, to then finally, Omid broke open the wall, and now we're free. We entered the room, but there was a sad sight to behold.
Bro, Mercy, I'm lagging, so I'm not gonna hit my shots.
Damn.
The group couldn't stop staring at the dead couple, but this also gets Kenny into a bit of a sad rant about how he still couldn't believe that Katra just left him. He states that he isn't mad at her for what she did, but wanted everyone to know that you don't just end it when things get rough. You tough it out and push through it together. It was heartwarming for him to say, but it's not as great as this Easter egg.
Randy Tudor. Good man. Damn fine man. Powerful stash. One of the greats.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's funny that this Easter egg exists, as this is supposed to be a reference to one of the developers, Randy Tudor. But anyways, there wasn't any other way out but the balcony, so we headed out that way and made it to the roof of the building. Lee's skin is getting pretty green, and I mention this because it was kinda scary to look at. Kenny knocked the walkie-talkie out of our hand by accident and it led it into this room with a giant hole in the ceiling. We need this walkie-talkie as it's very important. Krista just went for it though. Like, without a plan, she just jumped down. If things couldn't get worse, it just did. There are walkers with her. Kenny jumps down to boost her back up with the walkie-talkie. However, Kenny is too far out of reach. Walkers start to surround Kenny as he moves back to not get up. He tells us to go in to find Clementine. We can't see him, so Lee calls out for him, but we don't get a response. He keeps calling out for him, but the only thing that can be heard at this point are just the walkers. This greatly upsets Lee, but now he's also very pissed. This wouldn't have happened if this guy took Clementine from us. Now the group has shortened to 3 people, the lowest it's ever been. We finally made it to the edge of town, with the Marsh house in view. We just need to cross this sign. Lee goes first since we don't have a lot to lose at this point. As we almost made it to the other side though, the sign breaks. Now we're separated. With no way for Chris and Omid to make it to Lee, we tell him to find a way out of the city. He promises them that he'll get Clementine and to make sure to take her when they arrive back to them. So, with Lee being the only one to get to the Marsh house, he heads down to the street. There are hundreds of walkers in his way, but he didn't come ill prepared. He got his hatchet and he picked up a piece of shattered glass off the floor. He was pissed, but now he was coming for Clementine, and no one was going to get in his way.
Woo! Oh yeah, bitch. About to coordinate. About to coordinate. Woo! Fuck out my way. Let's get another cleaver in here. Oh yeah. Oh, fuck out my way. Oh!
It's the car from episode 2. So something was familiar about this guy. Lee made it into the building and found the room to the man that stole Clementine. He opens the door, and we don't see anyone in the room. The room seemed empty, but then...
Oh, hi.
This is the stranger. You can look him up, he doesn't have a name. He's only known as that alias. Clementine is in the room, but she's trapped behind a door with a rope tied to the closet door. He told Lee to take out all the weapons and put them on the dresser with a gun to his head. Not wanting to get shot, we did what he told us. He then told us to sit down, so we did. He started asking Lee questions, first being if we knew him. Of course, we said no. From our mind, we never seen him interact with anyone in the group. He then said something that we were expecting. He was the man that drove the caravan from the last part of episode 2. We stole his food, and not just that, he had a family. We said to him that Lee and Clementine didn't steal his food, but he retorted, Kenny did. He shared his story about what happened after our group stole the food. He lost his son when they went hunting for something to eat. His wife begged him to not go out, but he didn't listen. He wanted to toughen up his son in a world that was cruel, but to his wife's horror, he came back home alone. They went searching high and low, but their son was never found. His wife was in shambles, but he had something up his sleeves, the food in the car. But when they came back to the vehicle, the food was gone. She lost it and blamed everything on him, so she took their daughter and left. A day later, they were both found dead. He agrees that Lee didn't steal the food, but he was still after Kenny and his family. However, she started getting information from a little girl on a walkie-talkie about the things Lee has done and what he did throughout each episode. We brought her into the dairy, we allowed her to come to Crawford, and brought her into a city full of the undead. We pleaded with him, stating that we did what we thought was best for her, but he outright calls us out for the danger we put her through. The stranger then asks Lee some little questions like Clementine's age, and he actually gets it wrong. Clementine was thought to be 8 years old, but the stranger recorrects his wrong by stating she's actually 9. He gets disappointed by us not knowing something as simple as her age. He says some other stuff, but at the end, he threatens us and was willing to take Clementine away from Lee. Out of nowhere, he starts talking to the bag in between us. It was really weird and out of nowhere, but for whatever reason, Lee was just letting it happen. That is until Clementine found a way out of the room, and now she has multiple ways of attacking the stranger. We motioned for her to get to the cleaver, and he went on about how his wife would love Clementine. Then, she hits this man in the shoulder. We took the chance to rush this man for the gun, and we were getting beat a bit here and there, but we took over it soon enough. We got this man's leg, pushed his ass into the closet, and strangled him. Just to make sure he wouldn't come back, Lee picks up his gun and puts him down. The stranger is now dead, but Clementine is safe and sound. She was sorry for everything that has happened, but Lee is just happy to finally see her again. Clem told us that he promised her that he'd help her find her parents, and that he knew where the Marsh house was, so she got fooled. But now, it didn't matter. We need to leave and find Omid and Krista.
Oh. Nah. Come here.
The walker didn't recognize him, but how? But then, it clicked with Lee. When he was approaching the Marsh house, all the blood from the walkers he killed went all over him. Their blood can disguise them and make the other walkers believe they are one of them. So to be 100% safe, we covered Clementine in walker guts. Although, pretty gross, it was necessary for her survival. We made it out of the Marsh house, but dude, the streets are covered with walkers. Everywhere you look, there would be at least 20 of them. We started walking amongst them and it was working. No walker was suspecting a thing, and although they are close, the scent was too strong. But then, Clementine stops. That is when a big reveal hits us.
Yep. God, I'm so fucked.
With Lee passed out, Clementine somehow dragged us into a jewelry store and saved him. In case you didn't figure it out, we found her parents, but unfortunately, they didn't make it. Now she has no parents, and we revealed to her that Lee is big. We tried to get out of the jewelry store from the front, but Clementine closing the shutter doors got it jammed. We need to head to the back to get out, but Lee is getting very weak to even walk. Lee tries with all of his might to get back up, but the infection is worsening by the second. For now on, we are commending Clementine to do the task for us, as the only way out is through that walker that's stuck in the chair in the back office. We got her to get a bat from the front counter and break open the window to open the door. She sees not just a key, but handcuffs and a gun. We told her to get the handcuffs and to lock us against the radiator, just in case. She asked us to go for the gun or the key, so me and my boy said for her to get the gun, as it's the most important right now for her safety. But then, the walker that was stuck in that chair broke free, and now she's getting attacked. However, not only are we too weak from getting up, but we are handcuffed. Clementine, panicking, knocks over a vase that was on a pedestal and it hits Lee in the head. We wake up a few seconds later, and now the walker is stuck underneath the pedestal, but he has a firm grasp on our girl Clementine. We saw the bat on our right and kicked it to her for Clem to use, and she went to town. The walker is dead, and now she has a key and the gun. We congratulated her, but Clem wants us to get up. However, Lee suspects that it's too late. And guys, I'll just play the video.
Yes, sir.
You're strong, Clem. You can do anything.
But I'm little.
Doesn't mean nothing. You're gonna see bad stuff, but it's okay.
My parents. It's so horrible.
I can't imagine, sweet pea.
And now, you? Please. Please don't be one of them. Please don't become a walker.
There's only one thing you can do. You know that.
I don't know if I can.
Oof. Yeah. Can't turn into one of those fuckers? No, thank you, bro.
Shoot me, honey.
Lee, no.
It's okay. It's okay. It's for your safety, Clem. If you don't get out in time.
But I can wait until then.
No, honey. You can't. You can't risk it.
It is like Larry, huh? I know you did it to protect me.
Yes. You just have to do it. It'll be okay. You don't want to see me like one of them.
Okay, Lee. I can do it. I can.
I know.
Find Tomine and Krista. They're outside of town. By the train. You remember us going back there?
Yes.
Good. They'll take good care of you. And Clem. Keep that hair short.
I will. I'll cut it myself.
Great. Good. And also...
What is it?
No, don't worry. All right. I'll miss you.
Me too.
Mm. The fuck?
With Lee gone, Clem is all alone. No Omid and Krista by her side to comfort her. No Duck to get her child spirit up. No Ben to comfort her as a friend. And no Lee Everett to be her protector. She walks the field, out of the city, She finds a log to sit on and even found some bullets to potentially use. All of a sudden, she sees two dark figures in the distance. She gets up and tries to see who it is, but with how far they were, it was hard to make up who they were. We can see there is a height difference between the two figures, but it's all we can make out. Clementine is deciding if she wants to go meet them. Is it all meeting Krista? Are they completely different people? Or are they walkers? She's hesitating on making a decision, but then she looks up at them again, and now, they see her. She's too scared to make a move, but before anything can happen, credit rolls, and that concludes Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1. Guys, I honestly believe that this season is the best one. Nothing can top the drama, the tension, the relationships, and the pure terror that was Season 1. Every character here can be likable in some capacity, as they have something to look forward to, a goal set in stone for them, and overall, how each character reacts to each other and the apocalypse around them. Let's talk about the people that are currently alive, or just overall my thoughts on episode 5's characters. Omid and Krista are always great, and always try to do what's best. Hell, Krista took initiative and tried to remove Lee's arm to save him. The others doubt her decision was sound, but she wanted what was best for him. She didn't want for Lee to die, so that he can finally be with Clem alive and well. He'd lose an arm, but he wouldn't be affected anymore. She did the same thing by going after the walkie-talkie, although it risked not just her life, but her babies. She wanted to save Clem. Omid even did good in his department. He broke open the wall of the attic and wanted Krista to open her mind and listen to what Lee had to say. Even if what he's saying is basically him giving up his life to save a little girl. He has some funny jokes here and there too, like with the statue in the attic. I always found it funny, and his humor did bring some light into the dark situation in my opinion. Although we don't see them again in this episode after Lee goes after Clementine alone, they were a great addition to the team and were true ride or dies to the end. I've always liked their characters since their introduction because it's what the team needed the most. Although they already had characters that were pretty serious like Krista, Omid was basically Krista's polar opposite. He's funny and he pulls his weight when needed. Krista already did so much for the group and for him, so I'm glad he wasn't forgotten like that. Then there's Kenny. The most he's done is when they got to the house and were forced into the attic, I'd say. But here, this is where the tension was at its highest. Was Kenny really thinking of killing Lee to save the group? Who really knows? If you grab the statue, or if he grabs it before you do, the statue will always be thrown at the wall of the attic. I feel like this was basically them releasing their anger and their frustration at this point. And if you've been especially kind to Kenny, this is him releasing his anger for the fact that now Lee is dying. I don't think the situation would have ended up the same as if the Larry situation, as even though what Kenny said sounded ruthless, he isn't wrong. This is basically the freezer scene from episode 2 but in reverse. What Kenny is saying is true, as if Lee does turn, they'd be stuck in the attic, especially since Lee passed out as they made it up. Lee is the one to go against the idea. And this time, there isn't a what if situation. Lee will turn, and there isn't any ifs or buts about it. But then we get to the Kenny scene in which he's gone. He does something selfless for the first time, and goes to save Krista without a second thought. And when his life was put on the line, he told everyone to leave and find Clementine. We hear screaming, but after Lee calls out to him, he doesn't reply back, ending his arc for this season. Yeah, I know there's the other part where he tried to save Lee with Molly and a pickaxe in the alleyway, but it's not really too selfless. Anyone would have been done that shit. Anyways, but then instead of talking about just Clementine and Lee, we need to add the stranger into the conversation. He's been around since the beginning of the game. Don't believe me? Well, there he is. Slow it down a bit here in case someone in the back didn't see him. Episode 2 is where you get to see his car, and like what the stranger said in episode 5, that car had a lot of stuff in it that was a surprise for his wife and daughter. Now, do you think in episode 3 he isn't around at all, besides the walkie-talkie conversation at the end? But he's actually at the beginning when Lee and Kenny come back from scavenging. When Lee looks over at Clementine, you think that she's talking to no one since Clem says in episode 1 that it broke and she'll just talk to her parents to help her feel better. But she's actually talking to the stranger here, as we do know it works at the end of the episode. Then in episode 4, he's more responsive, and we even get to see a figure of him when we bury the boy. So with that, he's always been around, just out of reach. Clementine in this episode really doesn't have a lot going on here, as she is of course kidnapped, but this is where we get to see the most vulnerable side to her. If you had Lee's arm cut off too, she'd freak out at the sight of it. This is also where we find out where her parents have been gone for God knows how long. This is probably the most shocking thing to see, as even if you were suspecting for her parents to be dead, we didn't expect to see them amongst the horde. At this point in time, they were most likely not on our mind, as we wanted to get Clem out of the city and return to Omid and Krista. But with the reveal comes another, as she figures out that Lee isn't going to make it. This scene, even though I've seen it so many times, it still just breaks my heart. My friend and I were completely quiet throughout this scene, as there really wasn't anything to say. We're watching one of the most saddest scenes in gaming history. It's like watching Clementine's foster father die in front of her. We did so much for her and risked our lives to make sure she was safe, but in the end, we died. And the sad part is, Clementine most likely blames herself for everything that happened. If you think about it too, it pretty much was. If she didn't follow what the stranger was saying, Lee could have been alive and the group would have tried to make it out of the city. Kenny wouldn't have disappeared, and Omid and Krista would have stuck by and got out with everyone else. This one decision that Clementine made will forever live on in her mind, that she got Lee killed. If you didn't cry when you first saw the ending, I'm really not sure what to say. Let me tell a story about how I got introduced to this game. So we all know The Walking Dead show. It was insanely popular, and my family got into it. Although I wasn't watching it, I knew of a game that was about Daryl Dixon. My cousin's dad was playing it one day, and I saw it. I thought it looked really cool, so I bugged my mom about getting the Walking Dead game. Time went by, and I got it, but it wasn't The Walking Dead Survival Instinct. It was Telltale The Walking Dead. Which, by the way, I got to play the other game, and it's fucking trash. But yeah, I did complain a bit, but I said to my mom I'd give it a try. I was in awe, and loved it as time went on. However, when I reached the ending, I was bawling my eyes out. I couldn't believe that Lee died, and my mom even walked in on me crying. I don't remember if I ever thanked my mom for buying me this game, as if it wasn't for her, I'd never been introduced to Telltale in their games. However, as the script was being made, I got to thank my mom for buying me The Walking Dead. So I'm glad I got to do that. But yeah, that's the story of how I got introduced to this amazing game. Let's get back to Lee. Firstly, there were interviews from the voice actor Dave Fennoy, and he expressed his thoughts as to the first time reading the script to Lee's death. He was angry and didn't like how this was Lee's end to the story. I don't remember too much about this interview and how he was convinced to go through with it, but you can hear Dave crying when Lee gets shot by Clementine. Secondly, Lee as a character is where he's the most badass we've ever seen. He went through a horde of walkers and traveled through the whole city just to find one girl. And when he finally made it to the hotel, he was not afraid. But what makes this interaction so ironic is how the stranger talks to Lee. Lee has always been like a teacher to Clementine, as he teaches her a lot of things throughout the season, whether it was big or small. Even in the end of the game, you are giving her advice about what to do to survive. But when you meet the stranger, it doesn't feel like you're a teacher anymore. It feels like you're a convict. What do I mean by this? The stranger is a character that feels like his sole purpose was to antagonize not just the group, but you specifically for all the actions you've done. Like a judge, he tells you of all of your crimes you've committed throughout the season and is angry that you'd put a little girl in danger. From our friend and I's playthrough, he angrily expresses that Clem told him about how I killed Danny at the farm instead of sparing his life, how I left Lily by the road, and especially how I brought Clementine to Crawford, the most dangerous place in Savannah. We didn't even know that Clem turned 9 years old, but he did. We were so worried about treating her like a survivor that we were even treating her like a person, something that contradicts what we were told by Chuck. Everything that was being told to Lee was as if he was still awaiting to be told of his sentence, just like a prisoner. It's like Lee's past came back to haunt him at this very moment. But the thing is, some of the things that the stranger has done is no different from something a criminal would have done. He stalked Lee's group to get revenge. He kidnapped a little girl and most likely bribed her by telling Clementine a bullshit story about how he has her parents. And he put Lee at gunpoint and threatened to not only kill Lee, but to also take Clementine away from him. He himself is a hypocrite, but he thinks he can get away with his crimes as, compared to Lee's crimes, they're very minor. But he's no different. Hell, this is the same dude that lost his own son because he didn't listen to his wife. But he thinks he could take care of Clementine? This, in my opinion, is what makes him the best villain in all of The Walking Dead. He was foreshadowed to come around since the beginning, and the only reason why he wanted to kill you was because of one decision the group decided to make and the abundance of choices you made throughout the game. Your inaction turned an innocent victim into a man that craved revenge for his family. And because of the choices that were made, he used it against you. He doesn't look intimidating, like, at all. Let's get this out of the way. But a villain doesn't have to look scary to be a great antagonist. They need to set an example to the protagonist, even if the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree. Now for Lee. Firstly, I think it's really cool that the design of his model is different if you cut off his arm or not. Since my friend and I didn't cut off his arm, he looked a lot more greener compared to if you did cut it off. He looks a bit more gray than green. But when it comes to Lee as a character, this is Lee at his absolute strongest here. He showed his resolve and his true belief when it came to Clementine. He did his absolute best in saving her. Remember, he doesn't even know her on a personal level. However, it's the fact that he did so much for her and was willing to risk his life through a city of walkers and even walked amongst them that solidified his GOAT status. Everyone can agree that this is the best character in all of The Walking Dead. I've never seen anyone fight against that. His unwavering love to protect Clementine at all costs is what makes his journey so chilling, yet so beautiful at the same time. And with his confrontation with the stranger, it's so quiet, but you can feel the tension between these two. You can already tell in his eyes that he was willing to do anything to stop him. He just needed the right moment. And in the end of his journey, like I said before, he was willing to teach Clementine one last time before he had to go. Throughout each episode, there is no doubt that Lee had every intention to protect her, as if Clementine was his own daughter. He tried so hard to bring her to her parents, but when they both saw what they became, he immediately knew who they were. This is why I believe so many people connect with him. He seemed like a bad dude at the start, especially with him being in a police car, but in the end, no matter how you choose, he always tries to be so kind to Clementine. But unfortunately, life isn't so kind. I think it was such a hard decision to kill off such a beloved character in the series, but I think it was the best choice Telltale made. And worse because when we get to season 2 and 3, you guys will see. By the way, a bit off topic, well, kind of, but did you guys know this game was supposed to be in first person and not in third person like we see throughout the series? This was confirmed by the developers themselves, and you can even see in a few scenes here and there where you go in Lee's perspective, like when the babysitter in episode 1 attacks, in the same episode when Kenny saves you after Larry hits you at the pharmacy, in episode 3 when you shoot the bandits and walkers, episode 4 when walkers are outside of the nurse's office, and lastly in episode 5 when Clem shoots Lee. I thought this was a cool detail that needed to be added, as I believe this game would have been completely different if they went with this route of gameplay. Now, there was something I wanted to talk about a bit here, and that was theories I found online, and I think it would be cool if I decided to talk about theories about the game when I finished. First theory being, Clementine never shot Lee in the ending of episode 5. Now, remember when I said that Dave Fennoy cried at the end once the screen turns black? Well, this user expresses that Clem didn't have it in her to mercy kill Lee, and the groan you can hear is Lee breathing, as it's never been confirmed on screen that he got shot. I think this theory could be cool, but I think it doesn't make any sense. This game was full of weirdness and mishaps, especially with the outros for each episode showing how the next episode was supposed to go, but it looks completely different when the game got updated to release another episode. Although I can't really outright debunk this theory, the only thing I could say is that Clem's gun does shoot right in the middle of the screen, basically in Lee's perspective. So safe to say, he got shot. Next one is, Doug killed Katja and framed it as a suicide because Kenny called him dumb. This one is pretty funny, and I'm pretty sure it's a joke, so safe to say this theory isn't meant to be taken seriously. Lee's wife is Ava from the New Frontier. Now, when we get to the game, you guys will see how strange this theory is, but no? Chuck was never meant to be trusted. This one was kind of cool if it came to be, but the theory goes that he could have been a serial killer as he had such a quiet demeanor around him, even though there are people eating each other. One evidence leads to the driver of the train, as we see he never came back due to his brain getting damaged not by a gun, but by a window. So he is assuming Chuck smashed his head into the window and it caused enough damage to the brain that the train conductor didn't come back. Another evidence is that he's voiced by Ghostface, but this one is just silly to me. I don't think the developers were ever going towards that direction with Chuck, but do you guys think this would have been a good idea if it did happen? Kenny killed Katja by accident / on purpose. Now, this doesn't make sense to me, as the person saying this theory states that Kenny was so distraught over Duck dying that he killed Katja and made it look like she offed herself. This simply isn't true, as if Kenny stays with Lee, she still doesn't. And for Kenny to put on such an act if he does go with Katja would be too much for just one episode, I believe. And finally, Lee is in purgatory. This theory, I believe, is the coolest one. Basically, it goes something like this. At some point, Lee has died later on and has to gain forgiveness to escape purgatory. He starts off in handcuffs and later on escapes from them. He then finds Clementine, a name symbolizing forgiveness. He then becomes her guardian angel to guide her to her goal. There are other people that come as a form of obstacles or even another form of guidance for Clementine, Katja being one of them as the name symbolizes purity. But in the end, Lee gets his forgiveness as his job was done, and what happens to Lee at the end? He gets put in handcuffs, just like in episode 1. I think this theory is really cool, but the one thing I can't agree with is of course the handcuffs. Although a cool part of the theory, in the ending of episode 5, you could also put the handcuffs on the walker that's stuck on the chair. So it's pretty much debunks that aspect of the theory. Everything else is pretty cool, although I don't agree with it being the case. Just nice to think about from time to time. And that's it. That's the ending of... well, shit. Yeah, we still got the DLC to do, which I promised on doing. So if you guys enjoyed today's video, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. I hope you guys are prepared for Black Ops 4, as this is gonna take a toll on my mental health, I'm willing to bet. But I'll have to see. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe and stay hydrated.